Good afternoon. You can't make this stuff up. We live in a generation, in a time, where reality is so distorted and people come up with the craziest things and people just follow them and they jump in. And I just saw this article about this Italian artist, if you could call him that, Salvador or something, Galtor, I don't even know his name. And he sold this sculpture for $18,000. I think it's called Los Sonos, which means doesn't exist. And it's invisible. And he says it requires a 5 by 5 space, 5 feet by 5 feet, without any obstruction, so it shouldn't need lighting or climate control. And it literally, he says that it's filled with energy. And he says even if you take everything out of the space, but if you go with the Heidensberg's theory, then even nothing weighs something. And there's nothingness. There's an energy there that's worth this sculpture. And someone bought this sculpture that doesn't exist for $18,000. Now go figure. Why am I telling you this? Because it's actually remarkable to me, and it makes me think about, what's been going on with the progressives in Israel, and basically that there is no arguments, there is no factual context to so many of the things they spew and the realities they live in, but in their mind it exists. It might be invisible, but it exists. And people just follow it like sheep to the, following the leader. And it made me think about the dangers of following things blindly and where we're heading with this. People, say, Rabbi, last night we had an event and we had about 50, 60 teenagers and college kids. We had every University of Miami and Maryland and Michigan and Brown and Brandeis and Northeastern and UMass and you name it. There was a lot of kids here from a lot of universities, and we were speaking about how to be able to educate yourself, to be able to answer the people who speak these myths and these untruths. And just like this invisible sculpture that was sold for $18K, it doesn't exist. But if enough people believe it and are ready to pay $18K, then it's going to sell for $18K. In this week's Torah portion, God tells Moses, Shlach lacha anashim, send for yourself spies. And the rabbis say, why does it say Shlach lacha, send for yourself? And of course Rashi says, God said, Moses, till now I told you exactly what to do and what not to do. Now I'm leaving it up to you. I told you to go conquer the land. The Jewish people say we should send spies. Should we send the spies? Should we not? I'm leaving that up to you. And the question is, should that have not raised a red flag with Moses? And Moshe should say, 1 second. God's telling me everything I should do till now. Suddenly he's not telling me. So maybe it's a sign that I shouldn't do it. Yet Moses does it. And not just Moses does it, but later on in the Haftarah, Joshua does it again 40 years later and he succeeds. But why would Moshe do it, and why would Joshua repeat it? If God said it's up to you, so to speak, I'm not getting involved. And the answer, of course, is what God was telling Moshe, the Rebbe teaches in such a powerful way, is that God wanted Moshe to create leaders, not followers. He wanted the Jews to think for themselves. He wanted them to come to the right conclusions. But he wanted them to use their minds, their connection to God, and their understanding of God to come to the right conclusion. When you start teaching a kid how to ride a bike, you have to hold his bicycle the whole time in the beginning. But at some point you have to leave go and let him learn how to bike on his own. And what God said to Moshe is, Shlach lecha l'daitcha. Listen, you guys have been in the desert already for a couple of years. You're ready to go into the land of Israel. It's time that you start taking baby steps. Imagine if you're married to a woman, and after 25 years, she still has to tell you to take out the garbage when you come home. That's your job. If you know that that's what makes her happy, then once, twice, a year, 2 years, but eventually she's not going to have to tell you. And it's a much higher relationship than in a relationship with a husband and wife say, do this, don't do this. When you become to understand each other and you're in sync with each other and you do what you have to do, not because someone told you, but because you know that's the right thing. Because you know that's what your spouse wants. Because you know that's what your parent wants. And that's the message that God was sending Moshe. Shlach lecha l'daitcha. Let the Jews think for themselves and come up with the right decision of what God would want and what would be the right thing to do. And yesterday, sitting here with all these teens and college kids, it really comforted me to see kids who were using critical thinking to understand the conflict, to understand what it means to be Jewish, to understand our connection and relationship with the land of Israel, with the people of Israel, to understand that this is the greatest thing, to understand that we don't have to be apologetic about having a strong army or about being in the land that God gave us in the Bible, which billions of people believe in, and being there before before the Muslims, before the Christians even existed. We were living in Israel. 1,300 years before Al-Aqsa before Muhammad ever came, we had a temple there. Speak the facts, use your mind. And that's what God was telling Moshe. As Jews, Shlach lecha l'daitcha. I'm letting the Jewish people grow into a place and a position where they could be in sync with God and choose what's right, because their mind is thinking like what God would want. And when you do that, you don't buy invisible sculptures for 18K. And you don't attack the only democracy in the Middle East and the only place that truly allows freedom of expression. Imagine, there's a new government coming into Israel, and who decided it? A Muslim party. Tell me where else in the Middle East that happens. Shlach lecha l'daitcha. Use your mind to educate yourself, to make the right decisions, to be in sync in God, with God. God bless you. Have a great day.